Chapter 3. A Peculiar Proposal. Marine rushed down the white marble hallway, flying through the doors as she passed. Upon entering the great hall, she was greeted by several familiar faces, all transfixed by a great blue swirling portal of light, which filled the center of the room. The other mages in attendance had no doubt heard the same news she had. Maester Arden had run into trouble during his visit to Isalia. The message they had received had been brief. They were unaware of how much danger he was in, only that he had requested the immediate creation of a portal for his departure, and to have a healer standing by. Marine fiddled with the emerald necklace she always wore, and silently prayed to the spirits that her healing powers would be enough to mend any injury he may have sustained. She turned anxiously to Maester Valor, who stared unblinkingly at the portal, waiting for Arden to emerge.
"Has there been any more news?"
Marine inquired. Valor shook his head. "Only the message that we have given you, Lady Marine. We are unaware of how bad his injuries might be. We can only wait." Marine clasped her hands tighter together in anxiety. Maester Luell caught her eyes. She gave a soft smile to Marine.
"Do not fret, my dear. I have known Arden for far too many years. He has proven himself very adept at dueling. I doubt he has sustained more than a mere scratch."
Marine grinned slightly at her and nodded in response. She hoped it was nothing more than a scratch, though she doubted Arden would have asked for a healer to be standing by if it was. Suddenly, the portal before them began to ripple, ever expanding from its center like pebbles falling into a pond. The audience looked on in anticipation, awaiting the mage emerging from the other side. The portal began to flash, deteriorating and shrinking into itself. At the last flash before it disappeared, an arrow shot through the ripples, hitting the double doors to the great hall, causing all present to jump aside in surprise. An elf stumbled in after it, landing on the ground hard as a wave of water coated the great hall's floor. Arden was disheveled, wet, and covered in blotches of blood. As he crouched on the floor, the group noticed he carried an unconscious young man in his arms. Stunned silence fell over the room as the portal vanished from sight, shrinking back into the glowing orb it had been produced from. Maester Valor was the first to speak. "Maester Arden? Now see here! What is the meaning of this?" Arden completely disregarded Valor. He turned his attention to the only one in the room who mattered. "Marine!" Marine was instantly snapped out of her shock and rushed toward the young man Arden was holding. The boy was unmistakably human. No human had set foot within Caelum Vallis in over 500 years. The boy looked young to the elves that surrounded him, but she guessed by human standards he was close to the age of adulthood. His complexion, normally tan, looked extremely pale due to the injuries he had sustained. There was a deep wound on the boy's right side that was bleeding profusely, not to mention various other slashes that covered his skin. His clothing was stained in red, and a deep cut across his head coated most of his face in blood.
"What happened?"
Marine asked in astonishment. "He was hit by an ice incantation," Arden replied. "Can you heal him?" Marine placed a hand on the boy's chest. She could still detect a heartbeat, but it was erratic, and his breaths were very shallow. She furrowed her brow in response.
"I cannot say for certain. I've no expertise in healing humans. Their forms are more fragile than our own, and the wounds he has sustained are severe."
Arden's eyes darkened from the news. Marine touched a comforting hand to his shoulder.
"I can promise you, though, that I will do all within my power to save him."
Arden's eyes lightened a bit as he replied, "I know you will." Marine gave him a reassuring smile as Arden passed the young man to her. She teleported away with him in her arms. As Arden rose, Valor stepped forward. "Arden, I demand an answer!" he shouted, obviously angry that Arden continued to ignore him. Arden slowly turned, acknowledging his existence. "What is the meaning of this?" Valor continued. "Who is that human?" "He is Umbri's servant, and the main reason I made it off Helia alive," Arden replied. Valor was taken aback by Arden's words. I do not understand. Maester Umbri is no longer an ally or friend to us. He's aligned himself with Arden and sought to offer the stone and my head as fidelity. That human is the reason he was able to offer neither. Valor was visibly shaken by the news. Umbri had been his teacher during the time he had served on the council, and it was clear that his protege was unnerved by his former master's betrayal.
"So you brought the boy back here to heal him?"
Llewellyn piped up.
"Honestly, I don't know why you wasted your energy, Arden. It's just a human. They have short lives anyway."
"I wasn't aware that our oath to protect all within the 6 realms came with caveats, Llewellyn," Arden bit back, noticeably angered by her comment. Llewellyn made a face as though she swallowed a lemon as she turned away from Arden's gaze. "Calm yourself, Arden," Valor replied. "We can understand why you brought the human here, considering the assistance he offered, but I doubt it can be counted as a kindness. Even if he survives his injuries, I doubt he will be met with mercy when he is sent back to Isalia. They do not take kindly to slaves who betray their master." "Which is why I have no intention of returning him to Isalia," Arden responded.
"What? Are you planning on making him your servant?"
Llewellyn inquired. "Actually, I was planning on making him my acolyte." Both elves wore an expression as though Arden had slapped them, staring on in stupefied shock.
"Ludicrous,"
Llewellyn whispered as Arden turned to her. "The choosing of an acolyte is my choice, and mine alone. So states the Code of the Magi. Since I have so far not chosen an apprentice, a fact pointed out on numerous occasions, I would think members of the council would be overjoyed I had finally found a worthy successor."
"Worthy indeed,"
Valor hissed.
"You know full well the weight of selecting a human as your protege. Your decision will not sit well with the council."
Arden sighed. "Then I might suggest the council take the time to put pen to parchment and write down in great detail their grievances with my choice." He then scooped up his singed cloak, covered in blood, and began exiting the great hall, pushing open the double doors, before adding to the 2 standing behind him, "So I can tell them precisely where they can shove it." Kai was floating in an ocean, weightless, slowly drifting along with the gentle waves that carried him. It was peaceful. As he stared up at the night sky, his vision was filled with thousands of stars, littering the black backdrop with diamonds. As Kai looked around, he saw an island off to the west. It was still a fair distance away, but Kai could make out a willow tree wafting in the breeze. The island itself was lit up with glowing balls of light that hovered just above the tree line. Kai wasn't sure what the balls of light were, but they made the island shine in the dead of night. He noticed a figure walking along the shore of the island. As he drifted closer, Kai could see the figure was a woman, decked out in a long, flowing white dress. The breeze caught the fabric, making it dance as yards of lace and silk streamed behind her with each step. Kai wanted to call out and ask who she was, but he found that no matter how many times he opened his mouth to speak, no words came out. He tried to turn, to swim toward the island, but his limbs were not listening to commands either. The woman, however, seemed to sense Kai floating off in the distance. She stopped in her path along the shore and turned to face him. One of the floating balls of light broke off from its place along the island and headed toward Kai. The closer it got, the more Kai's vision was enveloped by the bright white light. When it finally stopped to hover above him, Kai had shut his eyes tight to prevent it from blinding him. The immense light was breaking through his eyelids as the silence was slowly replaced by the gentle songs of birds. As his senses slowly returned, Kai began to realize he wasn't floating in water, but lying in a bed. As he gradually opened his eyes, he could see the room in which he lay was surrounded by white. It was fairly obvious to him that he must be dead. After all, bright white lights are often said to be what is seen when crossing over. Kai once again tried to move and sit up, surprised that, this time, his limbs actually responded to his commands. But as he moved, It became apparent that everything hurt. A lightning bolt of pain shot down his right side, causing Kai to hiss through clenched teeth and immediately lay back down.
Ah, he awakens,
A voice stated.
I was beginning to wonder when that might happen.
Kai turned to see a woman standing in the white room with him. She was stationed in front of a tall shelf full of apothecary bottles in the corner. It was not the same woman he had seen walking along the shore of the island. Kai was certain of that. This woman looked to be in her early 30s and very pretty. She had ebony skin and deep, fiery red hair that fell down her back in a spiral of curls. Her eyes were a vermilion shade, and she had an almost ethereal appearance, which further proved Kai's assumption that he was dead.
Hello, Kai,
She said warmly.
Who are you?
Kai questioned. His voice sounded hoarse, and his throat felt like sandpaper. The woman immediately walked over and collected a glass of water from a pitcher on a table in the corner. She deposited the water glass on Kai's bedside table before continuing.
My name is Marine. I'm a healer from the High Council.
High Council? Kai questioned. Now that she was closer, Kai noted her stature and the telltale point to her ears. You're an elf,
And you are a human.
Marine stated with a smile.
First I have ever treated, in fact, although I think I did a pretty good job if I do say so myself.
Kai tried once again to sit up and was finally able to push himself into an upright position with some effort. Marine placed a pillow behind his back as he did so. Kai collected the glass of water, as the cooling liquid instantly quenched his thirst and soothed his throat. Looking around the room, Kai could see he was surrounded by marble and silver, with a decadence of silk and other fine goods strewn about. A floor-to-ceiling window was cracked open to allow a breeze as the finely stitched lace curtains swayed periodically. Where am I? Kai questioned.
The castle of Calum Vallis, just outside the silver city of Isalia.
The land of the elves? Kai asked in shock as Marine nodded in response. The information slowly sunk in that he was no longer in Helia. How did I get here?
Arden,
Marine replied.
he brought you here when you were injured in Helia.
Suddenly, it all came rushing back. Umbri's manor, Lord Arden's visit, and then Kai was hit with a spell, and it all went black from there. Did Lord Arden make it out of the manor all right? Kai inquired. Marine gave a smile and a nod.
Without a scratch, which I'm told is no small thanks to you. You were the one we were worried about. You were in bad shape when you first arrived 4 days ago. I wasn't certain you would survive. But it seems like you're on the mend now. A few more days of rest should find you right as rain.
4 days? Kai looked down. His body, which had been cut to ribbons by Umbri's ice spell, now only carried scratches. His right side was bandaged, and he was sore, but alive. He wasn't sure how that was possible, but Lady Marine was apparently the cause. The fact that Lord Arden had brought him here was hard to fathom. Kai was bewildered that any maid would go to so much effort to save the life of a human.
Speaking of Arden, he wished to know when you awoke,
Marine stated.
I shall go inform him.
Kai didn't get a chance to utter a response before Marine headed for the infirmary door and stepped outside, leaving him in the opulent white room by himself. Kai's mind was playing through everything that had happened, while at the same time trying to grasp the fact he was in Isalia, the land of the elves. He had spent so much time reading about the 6 realms, but he had never thought he would be able to visit another one. From everything he read about, Isalia was a lush landscape and temperate climate with greenery and rain. No harsh winds or sandstorms. Kai's eyes drifted to the window at the opposite end of the room. He lifted the covers off and threw his legs over the side of the bed. Every muscle in his body protested, but he was driven by determination. He had longed to see the other realms his entire life. He wouldn't miss the opportunity to see one now. Kai pushed himself into a standing position and leaned against the bedpost to regain his composure. His legs were shaky, and the wound on his side clearly hadn't healed completely, given the spasms of pain that were periodically radiating from it. Kai pushed the pain aside as he stood up and started limping toward the open window. The 20 feet he walked felt like several miles. When Kai finally reached his destination, he held the wall by the window and caught his breath. As he pulled the curtain aside, he realized all the effort had been more than worth it. Kai froze in stunned disbelief, looking out onto a world of green. Towering trees with drooping branches surrounded the grand building in which he resided. Emerald green grass stretched as far as the eye could see. Flowers every color of a desert sunset could be seen sprouting up all around him. The river running alongside the castle wall caught the afternoon sun and shimmered like sapphires. The air smelled fresh as the first rain after a drought. The spring breeze was soft and cool, unlike the harsh winds of Halia. Kai marveled at the sight around him, mesmerized by the breathtaking beauty everywhere he looked. The landscape was so stunning, it didn't look real, like a dream brought to life. Kai had trouble believing what he was seeing. The books he had read didn't do it justice. It's quite a sight, isn't it? Kai turned around to see Arden standing by the door to the infirmary. Isalia, the land of the elves and the eternal forest. Arden continued as he approached the window where Kai stood. And, my entitled brethren aside, one can't deny the view. After looking out at the brightly painted landscape for a while, Arden leaned against the windowsill and turned to Kai. "How are you feeling?" he inquired. "I'm fine, and I have you and Lady Marine to thank for that," Kai replied earnestly, then hesitated for a moment before also adding, "but also confused." Arden chuckled. "Well, I'd say that's understandable given the sequence of events." Arden left the window and walked over to a table in the corner of the room. Pulling a wooden chair out from the small sitting area, he sat down and pulled a pipe out of his pocket. Arden loaded the end of it with some type of herb Kai had never seen before. Then he muttered a word as the end of the pipe ignited. The smoke that filled the air reminded Kai of sandalwood and thyme. After several pulls of the pipe, Arden gestured toward Kai's sickbed. "Have a seat," he stated. "Marine will pitch a fit if she sees you're up and about already." Kai nodded in compliance, not wishing to anger the woman who had helped save his life. He walked back to the bed as effortlessly as he was able, biting back the desire to wince with each step he took. Once he was seated on the mattress again, Arden reached into his robes and pulled a familiar sight from his pocket. The yellow stone, the one that had been in Umbree's manor, glowed in the afternoon sun that streamed through the window. Arden held the stone up for Kai to see. "Do you know what this is?" Arden inquired. Kai shook his head. Umbree had shared no knowledge of the stone with him. He had shared no knowledge about magic in general. This is called a creation stone. It is one of the first elemental stones created by our mage ancestors several thousand years ago, when we first learned to tame and control the elements. This one is Ventia, the wind stone. Now, these stones have been spoken of in tales, but never found, until this one was located about 50 years ago by Umbree. The locations of the other four, Ignala, the Firestone, Aquilia, the Waterstone, Terilla, the Earthstone, and Fulmenia, the Thunderstone, are still a mystery. Kai inspected the gem of obvious value, curious how his previous goblin master had come to acquire it. How did Umbree get it? By sheer dumb luck. He found it in a tomb during a mission on Bruma, when he was still a well-respected member of the council. Back then, Umbree seemed to possess some semblance of honor, and was, and still is, a powerful mage. The council seemed confident to leave the gem in his care for safekeeping. However, as time went on, Umbree became less preoccupied with duty and honor, and his character leaned more avaricious in nature. It wasn't long before the council wondered whether the priceless heirloom they wished to protect would still be seen as priceless in Umbree's eyes. "They thought he would hawk it?" Kai questioned, amused. It had crossed their minds. But Valor is the current leader of the council, and Umbree's protege. He feverishly argued his former master could be trusted with the stone in his care. The other members were not so certain. They wished to bring the stone to Calum Vallis for safekeeping, but were concerned about angering Valor. I, however, held no such concern, so I volunteered to go retrieve it. I never thought for a second Umbri would be foolish enough to try to kill a maester over the coin he could make by selling it, but it seems as though Oren offered him something worth the effort. Kai looked at the ancient artifact, far older than much of magic itself. It appeared in perfect condition despite its age. What can it do? Arden shrugged slightly in response. It gives a boost of wind magic to any mage holding it. It can help calm winds, summon tornadoes, basically anything that a maester worth their salt can do. It is considered more of a relic among mages nowadays. Kai's eyes narrowed in response. So, it was just a trinket? To us, yes. Not to Oren. How can you be sure? Well, I can't say for certain, but let's say I prefer to err on the side of caution. Oren practices dark magic. He's one of the most powerful and dangerous mages of our time. He has no use for a wind chime like this, unless he can use it to cause damage. While this may be a relic to us, I'm betting Oren's interest in it is far more sinister. Whatever reason that may be, I'm damn well determined to keep it far away from him. Kai stared at the stone for a while, absorbing the information Lord Arden had just given him. He had never heard of Oren, nor had he heard Umbri ever mention him before that night, but if he was as bad as Arden described, then he could understand his desire to keep any possible weapon out of his hands. So, what now? The first step is to research more about the creation stones, to try and understand why Oren would want them. I've been digging through the texts as far back as I could to try and decipher just that. And what will be done with me? Arden paused for a moment before responding. Well, we can't send you back to Helia, that much is certain. Slaves who betray their masters are met with a short life of misery, and that would be paradise compared to what Umbri will do if he finds you. Kai had guessed as much. As such, he wondered why Arden had bothered to save him in the first place. One option is, you could remain here. In Isalia? In Calum Vallis, to be more precise. Does the High Council allow slaves within the castle? They haven't. Only maesters and acolytes are allowed within the castle walls, which is why I was thinking of you remaining here not as a servant, but as my apprentice. Kai chuckled slightly as he grabbed a glass of water to once again soothe his parched throat. As he set the glass back down, his eyes drifted back toward Arden, who was staring deadpan at Kai as if waiting for an answer. The realization slowly dawned on Kai that Arden's statement wasn't meant to be funny. You're serious? Completely. Kai was thunderstruck. He gawked at Arden, mouth open and mind blank. This must be a joke. But Arden wasn't laughing. Are you mad? Kai uttered in disbelief. Arden chuckled as he took another pull from his pipe. Depends on who you ask. I've heard arguments on both sides. And yet, I feel they'd be united in this matter. And why is that? Humans cannot be mages. Now, that's not technically true. Humans have never been allowed to become mages, but there's actually nothing suggesting that humans aren't just as capable of learning the craft as any other race. A slave would not be welcome here. The council wouldn't stand for it. The council can sit, stand, or roll the fuck over for all I care. They have no say. It is the right of a maester to choose his own apprentice. So, selecting you as my acolyte is my choice, not theirs. You would incite their wrath. Hell, kid, that's a weekly occurrence. Arden muttered dismissively as he blew out a puff of smoke. Kai was silent for a long while. He was trying to discover Arden's true purpose, for as much as he wanted to believe his offer was in good faith, he was a mage, and Kai's experience with them had told him they were not to be trusted. Why? He finally inquired. Why me? Arden leaned forward in his chair. I could ask you the same question. Why did you help me? I told you. I overheard Umbri. He intended to kill you. Right, but that doesn't answer my question. You knew me for less than a day, Kai. You didn't owe me anything. Yet you damn near died trying to get me and the stone out of Umbri's manor. Why? What should I have done? Ignore what I heard? Gone to sleep? Let Umbri kill you if he wanted to? Why not? Arden shrugged as Kai stared back incredulously. It wasn't your fight. It was a battle between mages. If you wished to kill me, you had no reason to get involved. No use risking yourself. After all, Umbri was the cowardly bastard with the plan. And to know of it, but do nothing? Just what would that make me? Arden flashed a knowing smile as he replied, Exactly. Kai was now thoroughly confused. He couldn't tell if Arden was appreciative of his assistance or chastising his choice to get involved. He seemed to be teetering between the two. Do you know what the Magi High Council is? Arden inquired. Arrogant omnipotence, Kai muttered, as Arden laughed out in response. Well, that may be what they've become now. But it's not what they started out to be. The forming of the High Council is as old as the creation stones themselves. It was a coalition of the strongest magic wielders with just one purpose: protection of all within the 6 realms. The oath the Maester of the High Council takes is to use their power, and even their lives, in service of every living being. But over time, that oath has become less and less important. Serving on the council has become less about duty and honor, and more about status and money. Many sneer at the other races they swore to protect, and benevolence is a dying trait. Arden pointed at Kai. And then there's you, indentured into servitude simply because of your race. You would be well within your right to feel not a drop of sympathy for another non-human, given the station that was forced on you. Yet as soon as you heard my life was on the line, or the lives of countless others, you sprang to help. You displayed a compassion that was never shown to you, and without magical assistance at your disposal, you stood your ground against a goblin maester, armed with nothing more than a letter opener. Now, if that's not brave, I don't know what the hell is. So if you're asking me why, I guess the short answer would be, I think you could be the best of us. Kai was speechless. He had never heard himself spoken of in such a favorable light, and certainly not from a mage. He didn't know what to say. Arden was being far too generous. Kai was neither brave nor noble. His desire to help had been driven by fear and without a drop of forethought, and he was honored that Arden thought him worthy, but a small thread of doubt was also pulling in the back of his mind. If I refuse, I will be sent back to Helia? Kai clarified. Arden raised an eyebrow in response. God's kid. If I wanted you dead, I would have left you on the floor of Umbri's study. Arden sighed and clasped his hands together, being careful with his words to help Kai understand his intention. If you refuse, you will be able to remain in Isalia if you wish. I will make sure you are given some land. If you want nothing more than a life of quiet, you can have it. This offer I'm making isn't meant to be an ultimatum. It's just the one thing you've been denied your entire life. Kai cocked his head slightly in confusion as Arden clarified, a choice. And it's not an easy one at that, so think carefully before you make your decision. Kai pondered Arden's words. It was true. He had never been given a choice. No human ever had. Until now, he had not thought it possible he ever would. He assumed he would be in service to Umbri the entirety of his life, no matter how long or short that may be. Arden rose from his seat at the table and placed his pipe back into his pocket. He pushed the chair back into place before heading toward the door. I'll come back to check on you later, stated Arden as he opened the infirmary door. In the meantime, get some rest, kid. He gave Kai a reassuring glance before closing the door behind him. Alone in the silence of the room, Kai leaned back against the pillow and closed his eyes. He listened to the branches swaying in the wind while he tried to organize his thoughts. His body was tired, but his mind was wide awake. For the first time in his life, he was free. His future was in his own hands, to shape as he saw fit. So the question that remained? What did he want it to be?